I am 28 years old, a woman standing on the edge of what was supposed to be the first day of the rest of my life. The morning light filtered through the large windows of the bridal suite, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Everything was supposed to be perfect. The dress, a cascade of ivory silk, hung on the door like a silent promise. The flowers, arranged in delicate bouquets, filled the room with the scent of lilies and hope. But beneath the surface of this carefully constructed perfection, a tremor of anxiety ran through me. It was not the normal pre-wedding jitters every bride talks about. It was something deeper, a quiet hum of wrongness that I could not quite place. My relationship with my fiancé, Mark, had always been a whirlwind. He was charming, ambitious, and came from a family that prided itself on its standing in the community. His mother, Eleanor, was the matriarch, a woman who wore her pearls like armor and whose approval was a currency I had never been able to earn. From the beginning, she had made it clear that I was not her first choice for her son. She was polite, of course, in that sharp, brittle way that let you know every compliment was a carefully veiled criticism. She would praise my cooking while mentioning how Mark had always been so fond of a particular dish that only she knew how to make. She would admire my career but wonder aloud if it would be too demanding for a wife and mother. Her favorite person, it seemed, was my own maid of honor, my best friend, Jenna. Jenna had been my shadow since we were children. We had shared secrets, dreams, and clothes. She was the sister I never had. Eleanor adored her. She would often say, "Jenna has such impeccable taste. She understands our family's way of doing things." It was a constant, subtle comparison that left me feeling like an outsider in my own life. Jenna, for her part, always seemed to soak up the praise, smiling sweetly and assuring me that Eleanor just needed time to warm up. "She's just protective of her son," Jenna would say, patting my arm. "Don't worry about it." I tried not to. I focused on Mark, on the love I believed we shared. I convinced myself that Eleanor's frostiness would thaw once we were married, once I was officially part of the family. I had invested everything into this relationship, not just emotionally, but financially. My parents, bless their hearts, had paid for the majority of the lavish wedding that Eleanor had insisted upon. My own savings, years of careful planning and hard work, had gone into the down payment for the house we were supposed to move into, a beautiful home in a neighborhood I had only dreamed of living in. It was a significant sum, one that left my personal accounts nearly empty, but I considered it an investment in our future. That morning, as my bridesmaids buzzed around me, a cloud of hairspray and nervous energy, I felt the growing need to see Jenna. I needed my best friend, the one person who was supposed to be my rock on this overwhelming day. I wanted to share a quiet moment with her, to laugh about how surreal it all was, to feel the comfort of her presence before I walked down the aisle. "Has anyone seen Jenna?" I asked, my voice barely rising above the excited chatter. Sophie, my other bridesmaid and a dear friend from college, looked up from adjusting the strap on her shoe. "I saw her about an hour ago," she said, a small frown creasing her forehead. She seemed a bit off, distracted. Distracted how? I asked, the hum of wrongness growing a little louder. "I don't know," Sophie said, shaking her head. "Just distant." Asked if she needed help with her hair, and she barely answered me. She said she had to go help Eleanor with something urgent regarding the seating chart. I tried to brush it off. Eleanor was probably manufacturing some last-minute crisis to keep everyone on their toes. And Jenna, ever the people pleaser, would have rushed to help. "That sounds like Eleanor," I said with a small, forced laugh. "Probably decided my second cousin can't be seated next to Mark's uncle." But the excuse felt thin. Why would Eleanor need Jenna for the seating chart at this hour? The final chart had been sent to the venue days ago. Still, I pushed the thought away. I was being paranoid. This was my wedding day. Nothing could possibly be wrong. I decided to look for her myself. I walked out of the bridal suite, my silk robe swishing around my ankles. The hotel corridor was quiet, the air still and expectant. I checked the small lounge where the bridal party was supposed to gather. Empty. I went to the room Eleanor was using to get ready. Her door was closed, and I could hear the faint sound of the television inside. I knocked softly. "Who is it?" Eleanor's voice was sharp, impatient. "It's me, Clara," I said. "I was just looking for Jenna. Sophie said she was with you." There was a pause. "Jenna is not here," Eleanor said finally. "She helped me with a small matter earlier, but she left some time ago. She mentioned needing to check on something with Mark. Perhaps you should try his suite." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Why would Jenna need to check on something with Mark? His groomsmen were with him for that very reason. It made no sense. "Okay," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Thank you, Eleanor." I turned away from her door, the feeling of dread now a heavy weight in my chest. I walked down the long hallway toward the groom's suite, which was on the other side of the floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. My heart was pounding a strange, erratic rhythm against my ribs. I told myself I was being ridiculous. This was Mark, the man I was about to marry. This was Jenna, my best friend. They would never hurt me. As I approached the door to Mark's suite, I noticed it was not fully closed. It was cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to escape into the dim hallway. And then I heard it. A sound from within that made the blood freeze in my veins. It was a laugh. A woman's laugh. A laugh I knew as well as my own. It was Jenna's. My hand trembled as I reached for the door. I pushed it open slowly, silently. The suite was large, with a sitting area and a separate bedroom. The laughter had come from the bedroom. The door to that room was also ajar. I crept forward, my breath caught in my throat. I peered through the crack. And then I saw them. The world stopped. The air left my lungs in a silent scream. There, in the bed that Mark and I were supposed to share on our wedding night, were my fiancé and my maid of honor. They were tangled together, their clothes discarded on the floor. He was leaning over her, whispering something in her ear, and she was laughing that same, carefree laugh I had heard from the hallway. I could not process it. My mind simply refused to accept the image my eyes were seeing. It felt like watching a movie, a terrible, cruel film where I was the unsuspecting fool. I saw the way his hand traced a line down her arm. I saw the proprietary smile on her face as she looked up at him. They were comfortable, familiar. This was not a first-time mistake. This was a pattern. This was their reality. And my entire life, my entire wedding, was the lie they had built around it. I backed away from the door, my movements clumsy and robotic. I did not make a sound. I could not have made a sound even if I wanted to. A wave of nausea washed over me, hot and acidic. I stumbled back into the hallway, pulling the suite door gently closed behind me. I did not want them to know I had seen. Not yet. The element of surprise was the only thing I had left. I made my way back to my suite on autopilot. My vision was blurry, the plush hotel carpet swimming beneath my feet. I fumbled with my key card, my hands shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the door open. I slipped inside and locked it behind me, leaning against the cool wood as my legs finally gave out. I slid down to the floor, wrapping my arms around myself as the first sob tore through me. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure agony. The beautiful room, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, now felt like a prison. The dress on the door mocked me with its purity. The flowers smelled cloying and funereal. Everything was a lie. My friendship with Jenna, my love for Mark, the welcoming family I thought I was joining. It was all a carefully constructed facade designed to fool me. Sophie found me there a few minutes later. She knocked on the door, her voice soft. "Clara? Are you okay? You've been gone a while." I could not answer. I could only cry, my body shaking with the force of my heartbreak. She must have had a spare key, because the lock clicked and the door opened. "Clara," she gasped, rushing to my side. "What happened? What's wrong?" She knelt beside me, her expression a mixture of confusion and alarm. I tried to speak, to form the words, but they were stuck in my throat, choked by the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. I just shook my head, pointing in the direction of Mark's suite. "What is it?" she pressed, her voice gentle but firm. "Did you have a fight with Mark? Did Eleanor say something awful?" Finally, I managed to whisper the words, my voice hoarse and broken. "I saw them," I said. "Mark and Jenna, together, in his bed." Sophie's face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and then a dawning, horrified understanding. Her eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth. "No," she breathed. "Clara, no. You must be mistaken." "I'm not," I sobbed, the words tumbling out now. "I saw them, Sophie. They were. They didn't see me." She was laughing. Laughing. The protective fury that ignited in Sophie's eyes was a terrifying and beautiful thing to behold. Her gentle demeanor vanished, replaced by a cold, hard rage. She helped me to my feet and guided me over to the couch, wrapping a blanket around my trembling shoulders. "Okay," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Okay. We are not going to let them get away with this. We are going to burn this entire thing to the ground." Her words sliced through the fog of my grief. She was right. Crying on the floor was not going to fix this. Being a victim, the poor, jilted bride, was not who I was. The pain was still there, a gaping wound in my chest, but something else was beginning to grow in its place. A cold, sharp anger. A resolve as hard and clear as diamond. They thought they could humiliate me, use me, and then discard me. They thought I would crumble. They were wrong. They had wanted a show, a perfect wedding to display their perfect family. And I decided in that moment that I would give them one. It would not be the show they were expecting, but it would be a performance that none of them would ever forget. My wedding day was not going to be the end of my story. It was going to be the beginning of theirs. I took a deep, shuddering breath and looked at Sophie, the tears still wet on my cheeks, but a new light in my eyes. "Get me my phone," I said, my voice no longer trembling. "And tell my father I need to see him immediately. But tell him to act normal. No one can know that anything is wrong. Not yet." Sophie nodded, her expression grim but determined. "What are you going to do?" she asked. A slow, cold smile touched my lips. "I'm going to get ready for my wedding," I said. "And then I'm going to get even." The first step was to maintain the illusion of normalcy. That was the most difficult part. I had to compartmentalize the screaming agony in my soul and present a calm, happy facade to the world. Sophie became my fortress, my gatekeeper. She fielded questions from the other bridesmaids, from the wedding planner, from my own mother, who was beginning to worry about the delay. Sophie was brilliant. She told everyone I was having a small, emotional moment, overwhelmed by the beauty of the day, and just needed a few minutes alone with her before we proceeded. It was a plausible lie, one that everyone readily accepted. While Sophie managed the outside world, I began to think. My mind, which had been a chaotic storm of hurt and confusion, was now operating with a chilling clarity. The betrayal was not just a spontaneous act of passion. The ease with which Mark and Jenna were together, the casualness of their intimacy, spoke of something long-term. This had been happening for months, maybe even years, right under my nose. I started replaying the last year in my head, searching for the signs I must have missed. Every memory was now tainted, viewed through the lens of this new, horrific knowledge. There was the time Mark had claimed to be working late on a big project, but a credit card statement I'd glanced at later showed a charge from a cozy little wine bar near Jenna's apartment. When I'd asked him about it, he laughed it off, saying he and a coworker had gone for a quick drink to de-stress. I had believed him, without question. Why wouldn't I? He was the man I loved. Then there was Jenna. A few months ago, we had been shopping for bridesmaid dresses. I had been talking excitedly about my future with Mark, and she had made a strange comment. "He's lucky to have you," she'd said, but her tone was odd, almost pitying. "You're so trusting." At the time, I had thought she was just being her usual, slightly cynical self. Now I saw it as a taunt. She was mocking my blindness. And Eleanor, her constant, glowing praise of Jenna suddenly made perfect, sinister sense. It wasn't just a preference, it was a campaign. She was grooming Jenna, positioning her as the ideal partner for her son, while simultaneously undermining my confidence. I remembered a family dinner where Eleanor had spent the entire evening talking about a charity event Jenna had organized. Such a capable young woman, Eleanor had said, looking directly at me. She knows what's important. Family. Legacy. It was a subtle but clear message. Jenna belonged here. You do not. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture of a conspiracy that was far more calculated than a simple affair. They were not just cheating on me, they were actively working against me, manipulating my life for their own ends. The rage inside me solidified, turning from a hot, burning fire into a cold, heavy stone. Sophie, I said, my voice calm, I need you to do something for me. Talk to the other bridesmaids.
Casually.
Ask them if they noticed anything strange between Mark and Jenna at the rehearsal dinner last night. Anything at all? Sophie nodded, her eyes sharp. I'm on it. She left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I knew I needed more than just a suspicion. I needed leverage. Concrete, undeniable proof that would leave them with no room to lie or gaslight me. My mind immediately went to the house. The house that was supposed to be our future, the one I had poured my life savings into. The contract had been handled by Mark's family lawyer, and while my father, a corporate lawyer himself, had looked it over, he had done so with the understanding that it was a friendly family transaction. He had not been looking for traps. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful. Clara, my darling. Are you ready? Your mother is about to burst with excitement. Dad, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to be discreet about it. The cheerfulness in his voice instantly vanished, replaced by concern. What is it? Are you all right?
I've fine ilid.
But I have a strange feeling about the house contract. The one for the down payment from Eleanor and Richard. Do you still have the copy you reviewed? Of course, he said. It's in my briefcase.
Why?
I need you to read it again, I said. Every single word. Read it like you're about to go to war. Look for anything, any clause, that seems unusual. Especially regarding the deposit I paid. What happens to that money if, for any reason, the wedding doesn't happen? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. My father was a brilliant man. He could hear the unspoken panic in my voice. He knew this was not just a case of bridal nerves. I'll look at it right now, he said, his voice now grim. I'm in the hotel library. I'll call you back as soon as I've gone through it. Thank you, Dad, I said, my voice thick with emotion. And Dad? Please, don't say anything to Mom yet. I don't want to worry her. I won't, he promised. I'll be in touch. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. This was a huge gamble. If I was wrong about the contract, then my leverage was limited to the affair. That was humiliating, but it might not be enough to truly hold them accountable, especially with Eleanor controlling the narrative. But if I was right, if they had laid a financial trap for me, then this was not just a betrayal of the heart. It was fraud. Sophie returned a few minutes later, her face pale. You were right, she said, closing the door softly behind her. I spoke to Maria. She said she saw Mark and Jenna having a huge argument behind the marquee after the rehearsal. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she said Jenna was crying and Mark looked furious. He kept grabbing her arm. An argument? That did not fit the picture of the happy couple I had seen in bed. What could they have been fighting about? Perhaps Jenna was having second thoughts. Or perhaps Mark was promising her things he had no intention of delivering. Whatever the reason, it was another crack in their perfect facade.
Just then, my phone buzzed.
It was a text from Mark. Thinking of you. Can't wait to see my beautiful bride walk down that aisle. Today is the first day of forever. The hypocrisy was so blatant, so breathtakingly arrogant, that I almost laughed. I felt a wave of nausea. He was texting me these sweet nothings, probably right after he had gotten out of bed with my best friend. He was a monster. A smiling, charming monster. I did not reply. I set the phone down on the table, face down, as if it were contaminated. The door to the suite opened, and Jenna walked in, a bright, artificial smile plastered on her face. "There you are," she exclaimed, her voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "I was looking all over for you. Are you ready? It's almost time." Seeing her was like being punched in the gut. All the air rushed out of my lungs. She was wearing the beautiful sage green dress we had picked out together. Her hair was styled perfectly. She looked every bit the devoted maid of honor. The image of her in that bed, laughing with my fiancé, flashed in my mind. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed not to lunge at her. I forced a smile, though I was sure it looked more like a grimace. "I'm ready," I said, my voice tight. "Just needed a minute." "Of course," she said, bustling over to me. "It's a big day. You must be so nervous." She reached out to adjust the delicate lace on my shoulder. Her touch felt like a brand, and I instinctively flinched away. She noticed. A flicker of something, maybe uncertainty, crossed her face. "Are you okay, Clara?" she asked, her voice laced with fake concern. This was my first test. I had to play the part. I had to be the oblivious, happy bride. "I'm fine," I said, forcing another smile. "Just jitters. Where were you this morning?" "I was looking for you." I watched her closely, searching for any sign of a lie. She did not disappoint. "Oh, you know," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Eleanor had me running around with some last-minute seating chart drama."
You know how she is.
"She was convinced your great-aunt couldn't be seated at the same table as Mark's cousin. It was a whole thing." She lied so easily, so smoothly. There was no hesitation, no flicker of guilt in her eyes. She looked me right in the face and fed me a story she had probably concocted with Eleanor. That was the moment I knew for certain that this was not a simple mistake. This was a deliberate, calculated act of war against me. The hurt I felt began to curdle into something much harder and more dangerous. I was no longer just a victim. I was an opponent. "Well, thank you for handling that," I said, my voice dripping with an irony that was completely lost on her. "You're such a good friend." Her smile widened. "Always," she said, squeezing my arm. "Now, come on. It's time to get you married." As she turned to fluff the train of my dress, my phone rang. It was my father. I mouthed 1 second to Jenna and stepped into the adjoining bathroom, closing the door behind me.
"Dad,"
I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. My father's voice was low and filled with a cold fury I had not heard since I was a teenager and had crashed his car. "You are right, Clara," he said, and the words sent a chill down my spine. "It's worse than you think." "What did you find?" I asked, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "The gift from Eleanor and Richard is alone," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "A private, unrecorded loan with a variable interest rate that can be adjusted at their sole discretion. There's a clause in here that if a single payment is more than 5 days late, the entire amount becomes due immediately. And if you default, they have the right to take a controlling interest in the property." I sank down onto the edge of the bathtub, my head spinning. It was a trap. A debt trap designed to keep me under their thumb for the rest of my life. "But that's not the worst of it," my father continued, his voice dropping even lower. "The deposit. Your savings, Clara. There's a specific addendum, signed by you and Mark, that states the $50,000 you paid into their family trust for the house deposit is considered a non-refundable gift to the trust if the marriage contract is not executed for any reason." The words hit me like a physical blow. Non-refundable gift. If I called off the wedding, I would lose everything. My entire life savings would be gone, swallowed up by Eleanor's family trust. They had me cornered. They thought they had me trapped. They had anticipated that I might find out about the affair, and they had created a financial penalty so severe that they believed I would have no choice but to go through with the wedding and quietly accept my fate. They underestimated me. They underestimated my father. "They're not just trying to control you, Clara," my father said, his voice shaking with rage. "They're trying to steal from you. This is premeditated fraud." A strange sense of calm washed over me. The final piece of the puzzle had slotted into place. This was not a crime of passion. It was a meticulously planned financial and emotional assault. And I now had the proof. I had the motive, the means, and the evidence. Dad, I said, my voice clear and steady. I need you to bring a copy of that contract to the church. Don't let anyone see it. Just have it with you. What are you planning to do? He asked, a note of apprehension in his voice. I'm going to finish getting ready for my wedding, I said. And I'm going to make sure that everyone knows exactly what kind of people the Prestons are. Clara, be careful, he warned. They're the ones who should be careful, I replied, a cold fire burning in my veins. They started this war. I'm just going to finish it. I ended the call and stood up, looking at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was not the same one who had woken up this morning, full of hope and naive love. Her eyes were hard, her jaw was set, and her smile was gone. The blushing bride was gone, and in her place was an executioner. I walked out of the bathroom. Jenna was still fussing with my dress. Sophie was standing by the window, watching me with worried eyes. I gave Sophie a small, almost imperceptible nod. She understood. The plan was in motion. Okay, I said, my voice bright and cheerful, the perfect imitation of a happy bride. I'm ready now. Let's go get me married. Jenna beamed, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break over her head. That's the spirit, she said, handing me my bouquet. As I took the flowers, my fingers brushed against hers. I looked her directly in the eye and gave her a brilliant, radiant smile. I couldn't do this without you, Jenna, I said, my voice filled with a sincerity that was utterly false. You're the best friend a girl could ask for. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. It wasn't guilt. It was triumph. She thought she had won. She thought she was just moments away from getting everything she had ever wanted. My fiancé, my life, and the approval of the woman she so desperately admired. She had no idea that she was not standing at the finish line. She was standing on a trapdoor, and my hand was on the lever. The walk to the church was surreal. I floated through the hotel lobby in a daze of cold fury, smiling and nodding at well-wishers, accepting their congratulations with a grace I did not feel. Every smile was a mask, every thank you a lie. Inside, I was a coiled spring of tension, my mind racing, rehearsing the words I was about to say. Sophie stayed close, a silent, supportive presence at my side. Jenna, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of frantic energy, constantly adjusting my veil, smoothing my dress, acting the part of the perfect maid of honor with an almost manic intensity. She was overcompensating, and it was pathetic to watch. My mother met me at the entrance to the church, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my baby," she whispered, hugging me tightly. "You look so beautiful. I'm so happy for you." Her words were a fresh stab to my heart. She had no idea. She was about to witness not a wedding, but a demolition. I hugged her back, burying my face in her shoulder for a moment, drawing strength from her unsuspecting love. "I love you, Mom," I whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart," she said, pulling back to look at me, her brow furrowed with concern. "Are you feeling all right? You seem a little pale." "I'm just overwhelmed," I said, managing a weak smile. "It's a big day. My father was waiting for us." He gave my mother a kiss, and then turned to me. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a reflection of my own resolve. He gave me a subtle nod, and I knew he had the contract. He was ready. The music began to swell from inside the church. The grand, traditional wedding march. It sounded like a funeral dirge to me. It was time. "Ready, darling?" my father asked, offering me his arm. "More than ready," I said, my voice firm. As we stood in the doorway, waiting for our cue to walk down the aisle, Jenna leaned in close to me. "Don't be nervous," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "He's a wonderful man. He'll take good care of you." The sheer audacity of her words stole my breath for a second. She was counseling me on the man she had been sleeping with that very morning. The hypocrisy was so profound, so utterly without shame, that it solidified my last remaining shred of doubt. I was doing the right thing. They deserved every bit of what was coming to them. I turned to her and smiled, a wide, predatory smile that for the first time seemed to rattle her. "Thank you, Jenna," I said. "I'll be sure to remember that." The door swung open, and the sea of faces turned to look at me. The church was packed. All of our friends, our families, and Mark's important business associates were here. Eleanor was in the front row, looking regal and triumphant, a queen surveying her kingdom. Richard, Mark's father, sat beside her, looking proud and happy. He, at least, seemed genuine. I felt a pang of regret for what I was about to do to him, but it was a necessary casualty. And then I saw Mark. He was standing at the altar, looking handsome and dashing in his tuxedo. He smiled when he saw me, a broad, confident smile that made my stomach turn. He looked like the perfect groom, the man any woman would be lucky to have. He was a whited sepulchre, beautiful on the outside, but full of corruption and decay within. As my father and I began our slow walk down the aisle, I kept my eyes locked on Mark. I did not look at the guests. I did not look at the flowers or the beautiful stained glass windows. I focused all of my energy, all of my rage, on the man who had shattered my world. With every step, I felt my resolve harden. This was not a walk toward my future. It was a march to battle. We reached the altar. My father placed my hand in Mark's. His skin was warm, his grip firm. It felt alien, repulsive. I wanted to snatch my hand away, but I forced myself to remain still. I gave my father's hand a small squeeze, a silent message of thanks, and he stepped back to his seat. The officiant, a kind, elderly man who had known Mark's family for years, began to speak. His words washed over me, a meaningless drone. I was not listening. I was watching. I saw the smug little smile on Jenna's face as she stood beside me. I saw the proprietary gleam in Eleanor's eye. I saw the unsuspecting pride on Richard's face. "Do you, Mark, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife?" His voice boomed through the church, confident and clear.
"Ido."
The words echoed in the silent space. The lie of it all was suffocating. Then the officiant turned to me. "And do you, Clara, take Mark to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" This was it, the moment of truth. The entire church held its breath, waiting for my answer. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch for a beat too long. I saw a flicker of confusion in Mark's eyes. I looked directly at him, and then I turned my gaze to the assembled guests. I let my eyes sweep over my family, his family, our friends. And then, in a voice that was clear, steady, and loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "No, I don't." A collective gasp rippled through the church. The officiant's jaw dropped. Mark's smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter shock. "Clara," he whispered, his voice cracking. "What are you doing? Is this some kind of joke?" I turned to face him fully, my expression as cold and hard as granite. "The only joke here, Mark," I said, my voice rising in volume, "is this wedding. This entire relationship." From the front row, Eleanor shot to her feet. "Clara, dear," she said, her voice a strained attempt at maternal concern. "You must be feeling faint. The stress of the day. Let's just take a little break." She was trying to control the situation, to sweep it under the rug before it could explode. I gave her a chillingly sweet smile. "Oh, I'm not faint, Eleanor," I said, my voice ringing through the silent church. "In fact, I've never seen things more clearly. Especially things that happened this morning. In the groom's suite." The color drained from Mark's face. He knew. He knew that I knew. Beside me, I heard Jenna let out a small, strangled gasp. Her smug confidence had evaporated, replaced by sheer, naked panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mark stammered, his eyes darting nervously between me and his mother. "Don't you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Then let me refresh your memory. This is where the world seems to slow down. The air in the church is thick, heavy with unspoken questions. I am no longer just a bride. I am the conductor of this orchestra of ruin. My voice, when I speak again, does not shake. It is a weapon. I think all of our guests, I begin, turning to address the stunned crowd, deserve to know the real reason we're all gathered here today. It's not to celebrate a union of love. It's to witness the final act of a very long, very cruel deception. Mark takes a step toward me. Clara, stop this. You're making a scene. His voice is a desperate hiss. A scene? I feel a wild, almost hysterical laugh bubble up inside me, but I suppress it. You want to talk about scenes, Mark? Let's talk about the scene I walked in on this morning. The one starring you and my maid of honor, Jenna. A wave of murmurs sweeps through the pews. All eyes dart from me to Mark, then to a ghostly white Jenna, who looks like she's about to faint. She's shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no." "You're lying," Mark says, his voice gaining a desperate, aggressive edge. "She's hysterical. She's just nervous and making things up." "Am I?" I ask, my voice deceptively soft. I reach into the small, hidden pocket of my wedding dress, the one Sophie and I had sewn in just an hour ago. I pull out my phone. "I don't think I am. You see, I was so moved by the love between you and Jenna, I thought I should share it with everyone."
I have some
readings. Not from scripture, but from a more modern source. Text messages. The panic in Mark's eyes turns to pure terror. He knows what's on my phone. He lunges for it, but my father, who is moved to the front of the church, steps in his way. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, son," my father says, his voice low and menacing. I turn to the wedding planner, who is standing by the sound system, her mouth agape. "Could you please turn on the main speakers?" I ask politely. I want to make sure everyone can hear this. She is too shocked to do anything but nod and flip a switch. A small feedback squeal echoes through the church, then silence. I hold the phone up. This is a message from Mark to Jenna, sent last night at 2 a.m.
I can't stop thinking about you.
Tomorrow is going to be hell, but you're the only thing that will get me through it. Just one more day. Jenna lets out a sob. Her parents, sitting in the second row, are staring at her in horror. "Oh, but it gets better." I continue, my voice gaining strength. "Here's one from Jenna to Mark, from last week. Clara has no idea. She's so naive. It's almost sad. But we can't feel guilty. What we have is real." I pause, letting the words hang in the air. I look at Jenna. "Is that right, Jenna? Is what you have real? Was it real this morning, in his bed, just a few hours before you were supposed to stand here and wish me a lifetime of happiness?" She covers her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She offers no denial. She can't. Mark is sputtering, trying to form a defense. "Those texts could be fake. You could have made them up. Could I?" I say. "Then perhaps this one will sound more familiar. This is my personal favorite. A text from you, Mark, to Jenna just 3 days ago." I take a deep breath, and I read the words that have been seared into my brain. "Just get through the wedding. Be supportive, play the part. Then we can finally have the life my mother always wanted for us." The silence that follows is absolute. It is a heavy, suffocating blanket. Every single person in the church slowly turns their head to look at one person, Eleanor. Her face is a mask of disbelief and fury. Her perfect composure has shattered into a million pieces. She looks from me to her son, her mouth opening and closing like a fish.
She has been exposed.
Her master plan, her quiet manipulations, all laid bare for her entire social circle to see. "That is a lie," she finally sputters, finding her voice. "A vicious, contemptible lie. My son would never say such a thing. This girl is unhinged." "Am I, Eleanor?" I ask, my voice dangerously calm. "Are you sure you want to talk about lies? Because I have another document I'd like to discuss. It's not a text message. It's a legal contract." I look to my father. He stands up, holding a sheaf of papers. "This my father says, his voice booming with the authority of a seasoned lawyer, is the contract for the house my daughter and Mark were supposed to buy. A house for which my daughter provided the entire $50,000 deposit from her own savings. Richard, Mark's father, looks at my dad in confusion. It was a gift, Richard says. Eleanor and I gifted them the down payment. No, Richard, it was not a gift, my father says, his eyes locking with the other man's. It was a predatory loan, designed by your wife, with terms that would have made my daughter a financial hostage to her for the rest of her life. And there's a lovely little clause in here, an addendum that Eleanor had Clara sign, stating that if this wedding did not go through for any reason, Clara's entire $50,000 deposit would be forfeited as a non-refundable gift to the Preston Family Trust. Richard snatches the papers from my father's hand. His face goes pale as he reads. The color drains from his cheeks, replaced by a look of dawning horror and betrayal. He looks at his wife, who is now shrinking in her seat, unable to meet his gaze. Eleanor. Richard's voice is a choked whisper. What is this? What did you do? Eleanor can't answer. She is cornered, exposed, humiliated. Her empire of lies has crumbled around her. I turn back to Mark. He is just standing there, a deer in the headlights, completely and utterly broken. He has lost everything in the space of 5 minutes. His bride, his reputation, and, I suspect, the respect of his father. So, you see, I say, my voice ringing with a final, terrible clarity, this wedding was never about love. It was about control. It was about money. And it was about a mother who was so determined to choose her son's wife that she was willing to collude with his mistress and defraud his fiancé. I look at Jenna, who is now being comforted by her horrified mother. And you, Jenna, I hope it was worth it. I hope he was worth throwing away a lifetime of friendship for. Because you have him now. You can have him. I take off the ridiculously large diamond engagement ring, the one Eleanor had helped Mark pick out. I walk over to him and press it into his clammy, nerveless hand. I believe this belongs to you, I say. Or perhaps to her.
Then I turn back to the guests.
I want to thank you all for coming, I say, my voice strong and unwavering. And I apologize that you had to witness this. But sometimes the truth needs an audience. The reception is, of course, cancelled. However, my parents have paid for everything, so please feel free to go to the venue and enjoy the food and drink. Consider it a celebration of my freedom. With that, I turn around. I see Sophie standing near the back, a fierce, proud smile on her face. I see my mother, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes are not filled with sadness. They are filled with pride. I see my father, his arm around my mother, looking at me with more love than I have ever seen. I gather the ridiculous, expensive skirt of my wedding dress in my hands. And I walk. I walk back up that aisle, past the rows of stunned, silent faces. I don't look back at the man I almost married. I don't look back at the woman who was once my best friend. I don't look back at the family that tried to destroy me. I walk out of the church doors and into the bright, clear sunlight of the rest of my life. I am not a wife. I am not a victim. I am free. And I have never felt more powerful. The immediate aftermath was a blur of motion and emotion. As soon as I stepped out into the sunshine, my father was right behind me, wrapping me in a hug that felt like it could mend the broken pieces of my heart. My mother was next, her hands cupping my face, her tears mingling with my own, though mine were now tears of relief, not sorrow. I am so proud of you, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen. I can't believe it, my mother whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. Eleanor.
And Jenna.
All this time. Sophie emerged from the church a moment later, her face a mixture of righteous fury and triumphant glee. You are magnificent, she said, grabbing my hand. Absolutely, 100% magnificent. You should have seen their faces. It was glorious. We didn't linger. My father guided us to his car, shielding me from the curious eyes of the few guests who had begun to trickle out of the church, their faces a mixture of shock and pity. As we drove away, I didn't look back. I had no desire to see the wreckage I had left behind. I had set off the explosion. I didn't need to sift through the rubble. The next few days were quiet. My parents took me back to their house, the house I grew up in, and cocooned me in a blanket of love and support. They handled everything. They called the vendors, dealt with the hotel, and fielded the endless calls from concerned relatives and nosy acquaintances. I spent most of my time in my old bedroom, sleeping, reading, and slowly, piece by piece, putting myself back together. The anger was still there, a low, simmering coal in my chest, but the sharp, stabbing pain of the betrayal had begun to dull. My father, true to his word, had immediately initiated legal proceedings. He met with his team of lawyers the very next day. A week after the disastrous wedding, he sat me down in his study. "I have some news," he said, his expression serious but satisfied. "I received a call this morning. Not from Eleanor's lawyer, but from Richard Preston's lawyer." I sat up straighter. "And Richard is, to put it mildly, appalled," my father explained. "He claims he had no knowledge of the loan's true terms or the addendum regarding your deposit. And frankly, I believe him. He is a decent man caught in the web of a manipulative woman." I thought of Richard's face in the church, the genuine pride turning to horrified disbelief. I believed him too. "He has offered a settlement," my father continued. "He will return your $50,000 deposit immediately. In addition, as a gesture of his profound apology, he is offering another $50,000 in damages for emotional distress and fraud." I was stunned. $100,000? "Yes," my father said with a grim smile. "He is also dissolving the Preston family trust and ensuring that Eleanor has no access to their primary assets. He has filed for divorce." The news hit me with a surprising force. I had wanted to hurt them, to expose them, but I hadn't fully considered the extent of the fallout. A divorce. Eleanor was losing everything: her husband, her reputation, her financial security. A part of me felt a flicker of something, not pity, but a somber acknowledgement of the totality of her destruction. She had built her entire identity around being Mrs. Preston, the powerful matriarch. Now she was nothing. "He also informed me," my father added, "that Mark has been fired." "Fired?" I asked, confused. "I thought he worked for a big investment firm." "He did," my father said. "A firm in which his father was a majority partner. Richard has bought out his son's shares and terminated his employment, effective immediately. He told Mark he needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, without the safety net of the family name and money." So Mark was not just humiliated, he was cast out, stripped of his job, his inheritance, and the respect of his father. He was left with nothing but the woman he had chosen over me. "What about the legal case?" I asked. "Richard is hoping we will accept the settlement and drop the fraud charges," my father said. "It's a generous offer, Clara. It would avoid a long, messy court battle that would force you to relive everything over and over again. But the choice is yours. If you want to pursue this in court, I will stand by you 100%. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about depositions, about having to face them again, about the media attention a high-profile case like this might attract. I had already had my day in court. I had delivered my verdict in front of everyone who mattered. The settlement was more than fair. It was a victory. "I'll take the settlement," I said finally. "I just want this to be over. I want to move on." My father nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. "I think that's a wise choice," he said. "The money will be wired to your account by the end of the week." He reached across the desk and took my hand. "You did it, Clara. You won." A few days after that, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Clara? It's Richard Preston." His voice was tired, heavy with sadness. I was silent for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Mr. Preston," I said finally. "Please call me Richard," he said. "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I wanted to call you personally. To apologize." What my wife and my son did to you is unforgivable. I am ashamed to be associated with it. I had no idea about the contract, about the extent of their deception. I hope you can believe that. I do believe you, Richard, I said, and I meant it. Thank you for the call.
And for
everything else. It was the least I could do, he said with a sigh. I have always been fond of you, Clara. I thought you were a wonderful young woman, a perfect match for my son. It seems I was wrong about my son's character. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was filled with a deep, paternal sorrow. I hope, one day, you can find it in your heart to forgive an old man for his blindness. And I hope you find the happiness you truly deserve. Thank you, Richard, I said softly. I appreciate that. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of closure. He was a good man, a victim in his own way. He had lost his family, the one he thought he had, because of the greed and cruelty of his wife and son. The final piece of the story came from Sophie. She came over a week later with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. To new beginnings, she said, pouring the bubbling liquid. I'll drink to that, I said, clinking my glass against hers. We sat in the garden, enjoying the warm afternoon sun. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, she gave me a mischievous look. So, she said, I have some news from the enemy camp. I couldn't help but smile. Oh, do tell. Well, she began, taking a sip of her champagne, as you know, Eleanor is now persona non grata in her social circle. She's been kicked out of her book club, disinvited from the annual charity gala, and I heard that her best friend of 30 years crossed the street to avoid her the other day. I pictured Eleanor, so proud and imperious, being shunned by the very people whose opinions she valued above all else. It was a fitting punishment. Mark and Jenna are apparently still together, Sophie continued, her voice laced with disdain. They've moved into a tiny, rundown apartment on the other side of town. Mark is looking for a job, but it's not going well. It seems word has gotten around about what he did. No one wants to hire a man with his reputation. And Jenna? I asked, a strange curiosity compelling me to know her fate. Sophie's smile was sharp. Jenna is having a terrible time. Her parents are furious with her. They cut her off completely. She had to drop out of her master's program because she couldn't afford the tuition. She's working as a waitress to help pay the rent. Apparently, she tried to call you a few times. I had blocked her number the day of the wedding. What did she want? To apologize, probably, Sophie said with a shrug. To try and explain. But it's too late for that, isn't it? Way too late, I agreed. We sat in silence for a moment, the image of Mark and Jenna, the golden couple, now struggling in a shabby apartment, a stark contrast to the lavish life they had planned to live at my expense. They had gotten what they wanted, each other. But they had lost everything else. They were trapped in a prison of their own making, with no money, no prospects, and the stain of their betrayal following them wherever they went. I thought about the money sitting in my bank account. It was a substantial sum, enough to start over, to buy my own place, to travel, to do whatever I wanted. It was my compensation, my victory prize. But it was more than that. It was a symbol of my independence. Eleanor had tried to trap me with finances. She had used money as a weapon to control me, to force me into a life I didn't want. But in the end, her weapon had backfired. The money she had tried to steal from me had become the very foundation of my new, unfettered life. I took a sip of my champagne, the bubbles fizzing on my tongue. The future, which had once seemed like a dark, terrifying void, now stretched out before me, full of possibility. I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable, and I had not only survived, but I had triumphed. I had lost a fiancé, a best friend, and the life I thought I wanted. But I had found something far more valuable, my own strength. They had wanted me to be a part of their family, to fall in line, to be a pawn in their twisted games. They thought my love for Mark would make me weak, that my desire for a family would make me compliant. They saw me as a stepping stone, a means to an end. Instead, I had become their reckoning. I had torn down their carefully constructed world, brick by brick, lie by lie. I had made their entire family, their entire world, drop to their knees in humiliation and ruin. And as I sat there, in the warm sunshine, with my true friend by my side and my whole life ahead of me, I raised my glass to the sky. I had walked away without looking back, and I had never felt more free. The lingering unease was not for my future, but a quiet, somber acknowledgement of the past. They had taught me a valuable lesson. Trust is earned, not given, and sometimes the most loving act is to let go and watch the world you knew burn to the ground, so you can build a better one from the ashes. And I was ready to build.